Dr. Hilary Gemara. We are on Daf Kuf Beis Amud Aleph, and we are about 6 lines from the top. And the Gemara goes on to explain the Mishnah. Hazevel shal balabayis. Zevel belongs to the balabayis. Ve'ein l'soicher elu ayoytze min hataner u'min hakirayim bilvad. The soicher only gets what comes out of the tanner and the kirayim. Frag the Gemara b'may askinan. What zevel are we talking about? If it's a chotzer that was rented to the soicher, the Torah the soicher, and the auction that made the zevel belong to the soicher, why should it belong to the owner of the property? It should belong to the soicher. Ella, what are we going to have to say? It was in the chotzer that was not rented to the soicher. The soicher might have rented a house in the chotzer, but not the chotzer itself. The Torah the maskir, and the animal that produced the zevel would belong to the maskir. That's possible. I don't need a Mishnah to tell me that if the zevel of the maskir's behema in the chotzer of the maskir should belong to the maskir. So come on, like tricha, the chotzer the maskir, the chotzer belonged to the maskir, but the zevel were not produced by the animals of the maskir. Rather, the Torah the osume alma kamula. The animals floated in and out. I guess it wasn't so sealed. And animals that came in and out left zevel there. That zevel belongs to the maskir. Zog to Gemara, the fact that the maskir is koine this zevel, even though the maskir doesn't even know about it, this brings a right to Rabbi Yosy bar Chanina. The chotzer of a person could be koine things inside it, even if the owner is not aware of it. Metzia freik the Gemara. Im Omar, what if someone said about his chotzer, Kol Metzia sheyavo l'soich hayoim tiknuli chatzeri. Any Metzia that ends up in my chotzer today, my chotzer should be koine for me. Lo yomer klum, it's not koine. Freik the Gemara v'meisa l'ad Rabbi Yosy bar Chanina. That chatzera shaladim kainala shalami daitoin. If you hold the chatzera of a person could be kind even without his das, amaya le'er maklum. If he said I want to be kind, why wouldn't it be my good kinyan? So at Gemara, you know why? The case where the bride says Omer kol metzia sheiver l'sachem tiknali doesn't work. That's because it was a chatzera sheni mishtameres. Chatzera sheni mishtameres, anything coming in and out. That does not have the din of Chatzar Kohen. Frank Gemara, Ihachi Ema Seif. Then let's look at the Seif. Yotzaloi Shem Metzia Ba'ir. What if Rashi explains it was known that a deer came into his property and the deer had a broken leg, so it wasn't going to be able to leave the property. Or maybe it was at the edge of the river and waves came in, brought in fish, and then the waves receded and the fish stayed on this property. So again, these are things that won't be able to leave the property. If that's what happened, then the var of kayam. If it's a chot with any mishtameres, what does it help? My habit. Zok to Gemara. The Yota Lo Shevet Tzibeir makes it into a Chatzar Mishtameres. Why is that? Given the Yota Shevet Tzibeir, since everybody knows that this property suddenly got gifted with these Metzias, and everybody knows those Metzias will belong to the owner, Mivdal V'Daily Inshimineh. No one's going to touch it. They know it's in this Chatzar. They know he wants it. No one's going to touch it. So that in and of itself make it mishtamer because no one's going to go touch it. And therefore, even though technically it's not a sealed and gated chatzar, but the fact that now people aren't going to touch things in it, that makes it into a chatzar mishtameres, and that's why it works. Frank the Gemara Meisvei. Zevel ayoytzi min hataner umin hakirayim v'akoylet min ha'aver. And if someone caught zevel from the air, so imagine he takes a bucket, he puts it, he's holding it in the air underneath an animal. When the animal drops zevel, he catches it before it hits the ground. Hareyu shaloi, the soicher gets to keep it. V'sheberefes, v'sheberchatzer, and if it's in a barn or in the chatzer, shal balabayis, that belongs to the balabayis. Frank the Gemara, v'misa lo Rabbi Yosy bar Chanina, that chatzer shalom kohen lo shalom midaitoi, yom chatzer shalom kohen lo shalom midaitoi, kohelet me'aver amai hareyu shaloi. Even if you have a bucket and you catch the zebel when it comes out of the animal, why would you be kohen it? Before it went into your bucket, it was in the avir of the chatzir, avir chatzeriyu, and we know the chatzir is kohen shlo midaita. So how could you be kohen it with the bucket before it came into the bucket? It was in the avir chatzir of the maskir, and the maskir should get to keep it. Zokt Gemara, Amar Abaye b'madpik fli b'shulei para. You didn't have it 6 inches below the animal in the airspace. You have the bucket right up against the animal, so it's never in the airspace. It's always directly in the bucket. That's where the soicher would be cut. Rava said no. Even if it was in the midair before it came into the bucket, the balachotzer wouldn't be cut because it's aver she'ein soifer lenuach. Here it's in the aver, but it's not going to venture to land. When do you say the aver chotzer is koina? That's if it's in the aver now, but it's about to land. But here, even though it's in the aver, it's never going to land because someone has a bucket below it. So aver she'ein soifer lenuach lav kamunach tomi. The biome isn't koined, therefore the soicher with the bucket will be koined. Frank the Gemara, mi pshita leila Rava, is Rava so poshut that Avrish ain't soifer lenuach is lav kamunach tami. Vami boy la. Rava actually cleared. He wasn't sure of that talach. The boy Rava, Zobak Arniki, the Pesach Zeh, Yotza. The Yatzaz of a Pesach set. Someone threw a money wallet, threw a property in one door out the other door. So it was hovering in the air above the property. Ma'u, Aver Shein Seifel Nuach. Here it's hovering through the property, but it's not going to land in the property because it's going to be flying right through. Is it Kamunach Tami? Do we consider it in the property and the owner of the property is kind of? Or Lav Kamunach Tami? Or is it not considered landing? So you see at a suffix. So how can you say over here it's Poshut Lav Kamunach Tami? So tomorrow there's a very big difference. Hatam loy mivzik v'loy. There, it's not going to land; it's going to fly right through. But there's nothing separating between the object floating through the air and the ground below it. Hacha mivzik li. Here it's worse because there's something in the way. There, Rava for sure holds. Where Rava has a shaila is when it's flying through, but there's nothing being mafsik between the ground and the object. Then the Mishnah says, or the Bride says, "B'sheva refes, b'sheva chotzer, harei l'shalom." Fake the more tarti, and Rashi learns tarti means. Why does the Bride have to tell you 2 examples? Refes chotzer. It just means if this part of the property was not rented to the soicher, so of course it's shobalabayis. Why do we need 2 examples of that? And we're by hachikamar. It's v'sheva refes sheva chotzer, harei l'shalom. It means even if you rented the chotzer to the soicher, but if there's a barn in the chotzer, the barn you didn't include in your rent. That's the chiddush. Amar Ravashi, Zoy Shemeres, Hamaskir Chatzeroi Stam. If you rent out your chotzer to a soicher, Lo Hiskir Refesh Shabah, you didn't include the barn that you had on the property in the rental. Meish the Gemara Sakash. Yoynei Shoivech v'Yoynei Ali. People would have these structures that would attract birds. And the birds would fly around to get food anywhere else. And then at night they would come back. So the question is that considered mezuman or not, l'gabe the chiyuv of shluch hakein? Because if it belongs to somebody, there's no chiyuv shluch hakein only if it's there in hefker. So the halach is chayavet b'shluach. You would be mechuyev to make shluch hakein. In other words, we consider it not mezuman, but vasur begezel, you're still not allowed to take it mipnei dakasholem. Not because be'etzim it belongs to him, but dakasholem, the person expects that the animals are there for him. He's not going to be happy. He's not going to be happy if someone takes it. Break the Gemara. If you hold like this halacha that we're quoting from Rabbi Yosy bar Chanina, that is that chatzera shel adam koine loy shalom midaitoi, that a chatzar of a person is koine for him shalom midaitoi. Kari kam, you should consider this ki yikar prat l'mazumin. His shoivach was koine the birds for him, and the eggs, everything is his. So that's not something that there should be a chiyuv of shalucha came for. Amarava zatrava, yes, once they're landed in his shoivach, they're his. But beitza b'yitzias ruba hu di yichayvel of shalucha. By the time the egg is partially roiv out of the chicken, or in this case, there are other type of birds, they're yoinim, they're doves, there's already a chiyuv shalucha came. But the owner won't be kohen until it falls in. So v'chikatani chayavas b'shiluach, that the Brisa has said that these yoynei shoivach, you have to make shlucha kain, is mekama the tipoy lechatzer. It's before the eggs fell into the chatzar, before anybody was kohening them, so they're still mezuzah. Correct the Gemara ihachi amaya surus mishum gezel. Why are they asur mishum gezel? You're not kohening them. Why would it be gezel? So the Gemara ha'ima. The reason why it's mishum gezel applies equally to the children as it does to the mother, and that is because there's an expectation that he's going to get it. As Rashi says, Kloimar gezel the darkei shalom. This gezel of darkei shalom is afilu ha'ima nami ka'amar. You know why? The chiddush is the daito shal balashoivech aleim. The balashoivech considers them belonging to him. The batuach hu the chayshun l'mekayim l'oim. Because he knows, even though these birds fly away every day looking for food, they always come back. So it's merely because there's an expectation from the owner that it's his. The boy or you could have another option. The darkei shalom is only on the beitzim, not on the milk, because they fly around. But once Roiv the egg came out, even though it's not his because it didn't land yet, it didn't leave the bird, its mother. Nevertheless, the owner expects that it's going to be his, and therefore there's a darkei shalom to say nobody else should take. Zok the Gemara, behashid amar b'yud amar also liz kois bebeitzim kos man shemer v'tzalayim. The halacha is that if there's a chiyuv shlucha kain, you're not allowed to be kohen the eggs. You have to first make shlucha kain before you're allowed to be kohen the eggs. Shenemar shalech the shalach hasaim, and then v'hader as habadim tikach. So once you hold that you're not allowed to be kohen those eggs, well then it's very poshut. Even if the eggs already fell into his chatzar, he won't be kohen the eggs. You know why? Because when he's allowed to be zoich them after shlucha kain, then his chatzar will be zoichet for him because it's a schus for him. But since he himself, it's also for him to be kohen these eggs because there's no shlucha kain done yet. In such a case, his chatzar won't be kohen for him, and therefore he's not kohen. It's not mezumin. It's not mezumin. Why is it only asur in gezel of darkei shalom? Either shalcha, if they already made shlucha kain, then gazam al. Then these eggs in his property belong to him. It's gzeila mamish. And either loy shalcha, and if there's no shlucha kain yet, you're right. You're right. It's not stealing, but it's not only asur to take these eggs to the darkei shalom. It's asur midaraisa to take these eggs. Hi boy shlucha. The Torah says that you're not allowed to take the eggs until shlucha kain. So the Gemara, the Brisa shouldn't have said that it's also to take the eggs alt gzela derabbanan al darkei shalom. It's also to take the eggs because it's an issue deraisa to take the eggs before the shlucha kain. So the Gemara, you know, we're talking about taking these eggs b'katan the lav bar shiluch. We're talking about a katan who's lav bar shiluch, so he wouldn't have the iser to take the eggs before the shlucha kain is done. Frek the Gemara, but there's a chiyuv of darkei shalom, katan bar darkei shalom. If he's a katan, what do you mean he shouldn't take the darkei shalom? The katan doesn't know from darkei shalom. So the Gemara, hachik amar, olim shal katan chayv lahachzer b'pnei darkei shalom. If a katan takes them, the father of the child should take these things. Where did he get this from? And when he finds out where it came from, he should take them back on darkei shalom. Kavalti. Zok the Heilige Mishnah right at the bottom of the Kufbeis Amadal. Hamasker ba'ayis lakaveir l'shana. If someone leases a house and the lease says a year, and then this Abra Shana, there was a double Ador, this Abra L'Soicher. A year is a year, and the Soicher benefits. But what if it's Hiskala L'Chadoshim? What if I said I'm renting it to you for 12 months? Well, then this Abra Shana, this Abra L'Masker. If they added in the 13th month, then that would have to be paid for separately. There was a story in Tzipuri, and he used a double lashon. He said, "V'shnei maser zov l'shana, 12 zov for a year, medina zov l'chodesh, 1 dinner per chodesh." So now, what is it? Is it a yearly lease, and then the soicher gets to have it for free that month, or is it a monthly lease, and therefore the master is entitled to be paid for the extra month? So let's turn over onto Kuv Beis Amud Beis. This story came to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Lefnei Rabbi Yosy, in front of Rabbi Yosy. The suffix over here, you split it. Frank the Gemara, Maitza Listar, I don't understand. The Mishnah started off with halacha. If you say 12 zuvim for the year, the soicher benefits. If you say 1 zov per month, the masker benefits. So then you bring a story where it's a suffix and you say achloik. Ma'isa listar is a sur mechsura. Really, the Mishnah should have added a third case. If you use both lashonis, then it's yachloiku. And now the story makes perfect sense. Split it. So it seems like so far the Balta to Suffolk, what the deal was, they split it. Amar Rav, Zok Rav, I argue. If I would have been there, I would not have paskin like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel and like Rabbi Yosy. I would have paskin differently. I would have given it fully to the masker. Why? What is Rav? What Chiddush is Rav telling us? That twice lashon achron. He holds that when you use two lashonis, you follow the last lashon, and the last lashon was a monthly rent. Rav already told us this halacha, so why did he have to express it over here? We could already know from what he paskined elsewhere that here he would paskin that it goes to masker. What did Rav tell us elsewhere? What happens if I told somebody I'm going to sell you this item for istira me'amoy, for an istira which is 100 prutas, and the istira Rashi says is really only worth 96 prutas. So you said istira and then me'amoy. So the halacha is me'amoy. The price is 100 prutas. Why? Because that's the last thing he said. What if he said me'amoy astira? Then astira. Then he only has to give 96 prutos. And if he's giving 100 prutos, it would be 100 shvacha prutos that have the value of 96 prutos. So Zok Gemara, no, that from that halach of Rav, I wouldn't necessarily know that in this case you go basal lashon achra, because imei hatam havamina perusha kamafarish. If we only had that halach of Rav, I wouldn't have known that it's toughest lashon achra. I would have thought that in that particular case, the second comment that he made isn't changing from the first comment. It's clarifying the first comment. In our Mishnah, the two rental agreements, yearly or monthly, are contradictory. Can be both. So there you need to know that it's twice lashon achra. But in the case of the estira, you don't have to say they are contradictory. You can just say that the second comment was merely explaining the first comment. Kamash Lom, that the Rav had to tell us over here that he actually paskins with surety that it's toughest lashon achron, and therefore the masker gets the extra month rent. Shmuel has a different pshat. Our mission says achloiku. You know why it's achloiku? Is because you know when they got to the diet, they got there in the middle of the month. So therefore, in the middle of the month, the soicher is a muchzik in half because he already lived there and he didn't pay for it. And the masker's musker is muchzik in half. because the second half he can throw him out. So therefore, you split it. But if the Din Torah showed up at the beginning of the month, Kula the Maskir, Avada the Maskir gets it because the Tzorcher is a Moitzim Mechaber. And Bava Soif Chodesh, if the Tzorcher already lived there a whole month, then Kula the Tzorcher. which means Shmuel clearly learns that it's a suffix. Therefore, you paskin and Moitzim Mechaber l'Varayit. Right? Shmuel lo yamrin tvois lashon achron. Are you telling me that Shmuel argues on Rav and he doesn't say 100% Tafas Lashon Achron, and regardless the maskir should benefit? But Rav and Shmuel don't value. Rav and Shmuel said a halacha together, and they said, Kur b'shloishim ani moichel. What if someone says, I'm selling you a kur for 30 shkolim? So we start measuring out a little bit, because you don't have one kur altogether. You take, a smaller amount at a time, little by little. So the law is, and on each little bit that he takes, he's being kindness with the Mashiach. So the law is, if someone said kur b'shloishim ani moichel, it's one big deal. Yochel lachzer boy afilu b'sachroin. Even by the last saw, before you made the Mashiach, it could be chayzer. Why? Because it was an all or nothing deal. And until you make a Mashiach on the full core, you haven't been kind yet. So therefore, even though you measured out the vast majority of the core, there's only a saw left. The deal is not complete because there's no Kani Mashiach made, and he could be chayzer. However, if he said kur b'shloishim, saw b'sela ani moichelach, if he said kur b'shloishim, but then he said saw b'sela, it's one sela per each saw, so now he's breaking it down into smaller units of saw, so therefore he should be kind to each one, rishon kada. Every saw that he makes a Mashiach on, he will be kind. So you see clearly that he holds Tafas Lashon Achron, because he said Kur b'shloishim Saw B'Sela, and we say he's kind each one. So you see the Saw B'Sela, which is the Lashon Achron, that's how he paskins. So if the more no, Hatamai Taima, we shouldn't Tafas. Whatever he measured out and took, he's a Muxagon. That's where he gets to keep it, but it can still be a Tafas. Hachanami Katafas. And in our case, as well, depending on how much time the Sarcha was living there, he was typhus in it. That's why he gets it. So in fact, these two Piskei Halacha are consistent. It's not a stira. That psaka b'shloishim saw b'sela, in Kur b'shloishim saw b'sela, does not prove Tafas Lashon Achron. That just might also be following the book. Rab Nachman is an innovative shot. Haka b'cheskas b'leah kariyas. No matter, even if the Soicher already lived there 2 weeks, we don't say the Soicher is a Muksik, because we always consider it that the Suffolk was noiled at the beginning of the month, and the owner of the property, he's the Muksik, and therefore no matter what, the Masker wins, and he gets to be paid in full. What is he saying? That you follow the Lashon Achron, which is the second Lashon, which said it's a month per month, and that's why the masker gets paid in full. Hainu the Rav, isn't that what Rav said? So tomorrow, no. Rav Nachman is saying something much greater. Apagav the apach mepach. Even if he first said month by month, and then he said for the whole year, where the Achron would be to the benefit of the Soicher, Rav Nachman still holds we paskin to the benefit of the masker, because he holds that karka becheskas by la lebedes. The Belting. They asked Rabbi Eshai, Soicher Amor Nesat. What if the Soicher said, I already paid the rent? Umaskar Melon Natal. And the masker said, I didn't receive the rent. Al Mila Havi Raya. Who has to bring the raya? Frank Lamar Amos. One did a Shiloh proper. If it's not yet the end of the rental term, Tanina, we have a brisa to tell us that law. If the rental term is over, we have a brisa as well. Tanina, it's not learned. What happens is a baby boy is born, a bechor is born, and the father dies, and we don't know if the father was part of this child, and he doesn't have to make his own pidyon ben, or maybe the father wasn't part of the child, and he does have to make a pidyon ben. So if the father died before the baby was 30 days old, so the chiyuv for pidyon had not yet been triggered, we can assume the father wasn't part of this baby, the baby will have to be part of himself. until we can bring some type of proof that in fact the pidyon occurred. But if the father died when the baby was already 31 days old, then we say then we assume for sure the pidyon of bed was done, unless we have a proof that the child wasn't nifta, then he'll have to be paid himself. So what do you see? Clearly, people don't pay early. So therefore, if it's the middle of the rental term, where the rental is not due yet, because it's a little bit, then for sure you believe the owner that he didn't get it yet, because nobody pays early. And if it's after the term of the rental, for sure he paid already. So what's your shayla? Zok the Gemara, you know what the case was? We're talking about the last day of the lease, that day. If it's the last day of the rental, so it's due at the end of the day. Do you find that a person will pay in the middle of the day? Won't wait till the end of the day? And that's the shayla. If on that day the soicher said I paid, the maski didn't pay, does he have to pay him? That was the shayla. Amalu, Rabbi Yochanan to the source. Rabbi Yochanan said we have a brisa about that as well. And let's turn on to Kuf Gimel Amud Aleph. Schir Bismane Nishpa Benoit. A schir is someone who worked for somebody. The day that he worked, we know the pay is due at the end of the day. He could swear that he was not paid, Benoitel, and he could collect. Now, normally, if I am claiming and you're denying, I don't get to swear and take. Normally, the person who is the nitva swears, and then he swears that he doesn't know the money. So why over here do we let the schir swear that he didn't get paid to take it? Because schir who the Ramu Rabbanan Shvualei, the Rabbanan made a special takana that a schir could swear to collect. You know why? Because the Bailam deals with so many different employees, he can't remember who he paid and who he didn't. But the worker himself has more than the mandas because he knows that he got paid him. So the reason why the shvua it goes to the schir and he gets to collect with the shvua is mishum de balabayis torah b'poyal. Avol hacha. But in our case, where we're talking about a renter and a landlord, there is no Torah. So therefore, the nitva is believed with a shvua to say that he paid already. Soicha mehem and b'shvua, the soicha should be believed as shvua, and therefore he shouldn't have to pay. Okay, let's stop here. And Bez Hashem we will be mamshech on Tuesday. So on Tuesday, Bez Hashem, on Monday we're going to be mamshech. And on Monday, I'm going to be saying shir on Zoom only because I'll be saying it from Los Angeles. I want to wish everybody a good tavach, a bench tavach, and we should only hear simchas.